Hello, welcome to Story Circles. Here's a story called The Tale of Summer and Winter. It comes to us from the First Nations people of Atlantic Canada. It's a pretty beautiful telling of how the giant folk hero Glooscap sees his people suffering with cold, dark winters and no food. And he goes to the south and brings back summer. I hope you enjoy the story. Long, long ago, before cities were built and before children had to attend school, Glooscap ruled over the Eastern Woodlands of the North American continent. Glooscap was the hero of the people, a giant who was strong and kind and who possessed magical powers. They were happy people who grew corn and hunted wild animals for their meals. The day came, however, when bitter cold set in. Snowstorms raged for days at a time. The ground froze and crops shriveled and died. Forest trees stood leafless and white. The cold winds that descended from the north were so pressing, sharp and fierce that people stayed in their wigwams, huddled together for warmth. Famine and hunger set in. Old Man Winter, the giant who lived further north, had claimed this land for his. Glooscap made his way northwards to Winter's shimmering snow-white home, a huge wigwam formed with slabs of ice, and as high as the ancient trees around. The Ice King was standing at the entrance. His long silver hair and beard glistened like icicles in the silent wintry air. As he exhaled, white clouds of breath puffed from his nostrils and wafted through the snowy treetops. Glooscap faced him, equal in stature. "Old Winter, you are well, I see." The Ice King nodded. "Indeed, my friend." "Now listen," Glooscap said. "It's true that your white silence is calm and beautiful, but my people are suffering and dying. It's too cold. You must retreat." The Ice King looked away from Glooscap's commanding eyes. "Come in so that we can discuss what's wrong," he said. He led Glooscap to his most comfortable seat, and he began to talk. He recounted a story about the blackbirds that loved the crisp, keen air, and another about a flute he was carving out of cedar. Glooscap loved stories. He fell under the spell of Old Man Winter's cool, rhythmic voice. Before he could ask the Ice King to release his grip over the Eastern Woodlands, Glooscap fell asleep, a sleep so deep that he slept like a bear in hibernation. Old Winter laughed to himself, and he went about his work. When Glooscap finally opened his eyes and stretched his mighty arms, he found his friend Loon staring at him in alarm. "Great Chief, you have been here for 6 months, asleep all this time. Meanwhile, your people are in great distress." Loon flapped closer. Glooscap shook off Winter's spell and jumped to his feet. Loon said, "My friends and I had a wonderful new adventure. We traveled to the south and saw amazing green lands, ruled over by a beautiful queen called Summer. She is the Sun Queen, and she is more powerful than Winter." Glooscap agreed that their people needed the Sun Queen's power. He listened as Loon gave him detailed directions. Then, with haste, the giant set off for the coast. There he sang a special song, and magically his ally, Whale, appeared. Glooscap swam out to meet her and asked that she grant him passage to the south. "I can take you," she said, "but I have a rule you must follow. You must shut your eyes while I carry you, or we will be in grave peril. If you do open even one eye, I am afraid we'll run aground or get stranded on a shore." Glooscap promised to keep his eyes shut. He straddled her back, and they set off towards the equator. A deathly chill rose from the ocean as the two companions hurried through the northern waters. And then there was more sun than fog, more warm breezes than howling icy winds. Under a blue sky, Whale and Glooscap sped past small islands. Trees, flowers, sweet fruit and sea salt perfumed the air. In the distance was a majestic green land. It was the land of the rainforest that Loon had discovered. Whale now swam with care. Down in the sands, the warning song of the clams could be heard. "Keep out to sea," they called, "for the water's here shallow, and you could be beached." Whale didn't understand their language, but Glooscap did. He was on an urgent mission, though, and so he said to Whale, "The clams are warning that you should hurry because a storm is blowing in." And contrary to Whale's request, the giant opened his eyes. At once they struck hard on the golden brown sand. Thinking she would die there, Whale sang a song of fear. But Glooscap merely smiled. He leapt off her back and applied his arms to her side. With his great strength, he pushed her out into the water so that she was quite immersed and free to swim. Then, to show his gratitude, he tossed her his pipe filled with tobacco. Whale puffed at it in glee, and she swam off. To this day, you may see Whale spouting in the ocean as she goes about her business. Glooscap surveyed this green wilderness. Hundreds of birds of wonderful colours fluttered here and there. They hummed and chirped and chattered. Below their constant backdrop of song came the sounds of a flute. The giant listened carefully. Sometimes a soft drumming worked its way through the airy music. Following the direction of the instruments, he walked for miles through the towering rainforest. And with every step, he felt his strength grow. Winter's power over him had vanished. At last, Glooscap drew close to the source of the music. Through the foliage, he saw a clearing in which a group of laughing, sun-drenched people were dancing. Bright flower chains hung from their necks. At the center was a tall woman who glowed with beauty and energy. She radiated a special light, and he knew she was Summer, the Sun Queen he'd been seeking. From amongst the bushes, Glooscap sang. His song was sweet tender and magical. The Sun Queen found him and favoured him with her attention. Glooscap asked for help. "I will be happy to help your people," she said, "but how will I return?" "In my possession is the longest cord cut from moose hide." He held the thin cord out for her to see. "We will let it run out behind us," he said. "To find your way back, you need only wind it up again. Trust my magic. It will be as long as it needs to be." They travelled northwards through forests and plains. The giant ran with summer in his arms. Their journey was made faster by his special powers. As they left the south behind, the air turned cold, and when they reached the land of Glooscap's people, snow was pouring from the sky. No one could be seen. Glooscap feared that the situation had worsened, and so he hurried further north, to Winter's home. As before, Old Man Winter was standing at the entrance to his ice wigwam. He welcomed Glooscap and his beautiful companion inside, and offered them his best seats. They sat, and he began to tell them stories of the animals of the woods. But his guests did not fall asleep. Summer sat opposite Winter. Warmth and energy radiated from her to all corners of the room. Beads of sweat began to run down the old king's face. When water began to drip from the ceiling of the wigwam, the king jumped to his feet in horror. He stared at Summer, but he spoke to Glooscap. "Who have you brought to my home?" The Sun Queen stood. "It is I, Summer. All that you have put to sleep will now awaken again." As she spoke, Glooscap rose in wonder and satisfaction. The sheets of ice that roofed the king's wigwam melted and disappeared. Buds pushed their way up through the branches of trees. Birds emerged from hiding to twitter and flit about the forest in the warm sunlight. The snow began to melt, and water trickled through the river courses. Hot tears ran down the old king's face. His reign had ended. The Sun Queen pitied him and said, "There is still a place for you. You may have all the territory to the far north. There I shall not disturb you, and you may visit Glooscap's country for 6 months every year. But, Winter, you must understand that people suffer when you use all your power. You must be less severe during your stay." The old giant saw that her power was great, and he accepted her will. And so, for 6 months of every year, Winter reigns with kindness over the Eastern Woodlands. Glooscap's people love the cold, quiet time. Then the buds begin to burst up from bare branches, and warm breezes blow in from the south, and the birds begin to chirp. The people know that the Sun Queen is on her way, following Glooscap's cord, and they give thanks for the promise of warmth and the time for growing their corn.